I suppose we could begin this story with the death of my dad in 2021. At the time, he was 87 years old and he had suffered a stroke, and he had possibly had minor, smaller strokes before then. But he had had heart issues into his 50s. I think he had had at least 3 heart attacks. Yep. And on the 3rd or 2nd, I can't remember, he had a pacemaker defibrillator put in, which helped him get along for several years, like I said, till about when he was 87. And fortunately, in a way, things went quick for him. It lasted probably around 10 days, and part of that might have been just my and the family's fault, in which we let him, hoping that maybe there would be some progress, but eventually he wasn't in pain. He was kept out of pain, but we basically had to let him go, as there was no hope for any kind of coming back from this. So why am I talking about this now? I think when we're parents, I'm a parent, and we have kids, especially in the older days. I don't know, some of you, like I said, 55 and up, you kind of remember this maybe floating around, especially from the older people, that it was kind of the job of the eldest, especially the eldest son, to deal with all the property and everything that's left behind. In other words, the parent got to basically live their life unhindered to the last moment, and that's the way it was. And then that was the thing that worked in maybe in older models of families and traditional, back to the Walton days, where everybody lived under the same roof or very nearby, and basically lived on the farm or whatever. So I must say right off the beginning that my parents were both, my mom's still alive. She's been suffering with dementia, and basically she had dementia few years before my dad passed on. But when he did pass, it was just like a button or a switch went, and she knows who I am. She has no short-term memory, and she has no memory whatsoever of the house that Dad and I built her back in the 80s, and that she lived in for 40 years. She doesn't recall the house at all. We had lived in a trailer before that, mobile home, and her memories only go back to that point when we were really young. But 40 years of her memories seemed to be just erased. And I think partially it was the shock of waking up to Dad that morning in, I think it was August 2021, if I have my dates right, and finding him unresponsive. So not to get into all the details of that, like I said, my parents were very good parents to us as children, saw that we had everything that we wanted. But there was an aspect to their life that left a lot of heartache and trouble for us, my brother and I, after the fact. My dad retired after years of working at a shipyard as a crane operator, machinist, and that sort of thing, fixing, a machinist in the sense of fixing machines and the trucks and the things that they had there, and things they called the bull moose, which was like along with a vehicle with an extended arm that could reach out and lift things, and then also a crane. So too much detail there, I know, but it kind of lends to the mindset that Dad had. When he retired, he had his own small engine repair in the basement, and basically my parents lived about, we'll put it in the sense of distance, including mostly highway driving. It was a 2.5 hour drive one way. So you're looking at an almost 5-hour trip if you stop for a snack or something, 5-hour round trip to get there and back to the home. Now my dad was one of those kinds of guys that never really wanted to talk about death. He was a strongly religious person, and he knew that death was coming, but he basically immersed himself in close to not quite fundamentalism, but sort of an evangelical Christian worldview. And in that worldview, he kind of chose the idea that the second coming was a real thing, was going to happen, and that any day that could happen. In fact, my dad used to say to me, as he got older, and maybe when we were visiting and he was about to leave, or he'd say something like, I guess he was kind of commenting on us getting older and stuff. He said, well, Jesus may come back at any moment. So he had this, what I would call an erroneous view of life that kind of led him to not prepare for those times. He had a kind of a natural disdain for lawyers and anything legal. So in that respect, he really didn't get anything done because my mom, when she was in pretty good health, kind of forced it on Dad to go ahead and have a loose will made. So he had a will made, and so we had the house, and in the basement he had a small engine repair. Okay, I may just include some details, but he was kind of a guy who liked to collect things, especially broken things, and he always thought that perhaps someday he was going to get around to fixing them. So if you can imagine your mind, and I hope I can include a few pictures in this video of basically what we came across after things settled out. And I want to go step back just a little bit and let you know that the question comes to mind, why didn't you go down there and start cleaning this stuff out? Well, there's two reasons for that, actually. One had to do with my own health, and we were going through the height of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. The area was under at one point for a few months, under a forest fire ban because we had the worst forest fire. I see the wind's picking up here a bit. Hopefully it doesn't affect sound. We had the worst forest fire that was ever seen in nearly 100 years in the province that I live in. So that stopped us from going down. Local disposal units, this was a very remote area, and it was very hard to get someone with a bin or a dumpster to come in and haul it away, plus being 5 hours away, scheduling that sort of thing, and guaranteeing I could get down there, plus the winters we had where the roads were bad. And I also went through a time, I know this sounds like a lot of excuses and stuff, but this is life happens. And I think this is what my rant is. I think as parents, we don't really see what we're leaving our kids. I think we get in our minds, we think of our children as we age maybe 20 years younger than what they are. So if you're like 65, 70, you're probably thinking of your kids as being 30. I know that's poor math, but maybe in their 30s. And you're remembering them as being healthy and capable and doing things. Okay, so what happens? The dad dies in 21. At that point, he had no real funeral arrangements made. He just had what he wanted done, where he wanted to be buried, which was in fact, basically a 5-hour one-way trip where we had to rent to his old home, which we all jokingly say was back in the woods. I mean, it's a lovely spot, but hard to get to. Even the small church that used to be in this area had to be torn down because it was dilapidated because of neglect. So there was a very old rural graveyard there. Now, I'm not sure if this wind is affecting us much. It's picking up more than I thought. Okay, maybe I'll just continue. Okay, here we are back again. Hopefully this is an area where it's not so windy. Okay, so yeah, the grave site for my dad's committal was a very, very long ways away, and we had to rent hotel and stay, and oh my, it was a lot. A lot of the logistics were crazy, but you know, you try to do what you can for your loved ones. All right, so the main point of this is to get back to what had happened. Is a lot of parents and people, as we age, we don't realize just what our children, who are no longer children, I realize that too, but young adults, in my case an older adult, I was in my late 50s, I'm 61 now, the situation you might be in, the way you remember your children is not the way they're going to be, hopefully, if you start getting in that range of, you know, your 80s and it's time to pack it in, if you're lucky to get that far. So that summer, that spring beforehand, just to wind back a bit, I had tore my rotator cuff. I think it was my left arm. I can't remember. And I fortunately, it did come back after about a year. I was able to get it to function back again with some sort of physiotherapy and self-help there. And at the same time, about a month after that, it was because we were in a very near close call car accident. We didn't actually get in the accident. I was able to avoid it. But by doing that, I also strained what's called your piriformis muscle. It's basically in your butt. And so you've heard of sciatica. It presses on the sciatic nerve. And if you get it quite bad, which I had it in the other opposite leg a year or so before. I'm not sure from doing, but it's something that can happen if you're an active person, you know, you're lifting and doing things like that, and you know, had that kind of a life, which I had. And so anyways, when you get sciatica in that form, it's going to last you at least 6 weeks, and it's going to take you 4 weeks, even doing exercises, before you can just get up and walk around. Well, that's just when Dad died. So here I was, just basically having my left arm where I couldn't get it up to 45-degree angle above my head without pain. And I was also in severe pain, so much so that my wife had to drive us to the hospital where Dad was and where he died, which, believe it or not, was another almost 3 hours highway driving. And we had, for example, that was summer. It was summertime, and this is when Dad was first put in the hospital about the end of July, and he was there till about the 16th of August, I think, if I remember right. And so in order to even see Dad in the hospital, we had to travel, and we live close to a coastline between here and there, and it was just downpours of rain so hard you couldn't even see, you couldn't get the windshield wipers, couldn't keep up with the downpouring of rain. So okay, all that's done, and that's life, right? That's life. Things like that happens. There's worse stories out there. Yes, I know I'm fortunate, you know, we didn't have an earthquake and all that sort of thing, and some terrible thing. I mean, terrible things happen to people I know. And those things aren't really, those are weather, or those, yeah, not knocking those things. But I think you have to think that we all know the world's changing right now. It's, you know, the climate is shifting, which I don't care what you believe in, it is shifting one way, such that, you know, when you have a forest fire in the area you haven't had for almost 100 years, you're not prepared for that mentally. You're not, you know, your fire departments and your personnel, and you're not, no one's really expected that. So my parents grew up in an era basically where they missed out on the main wars. They weren't in the military. Jobs paid well. Housing was cheap. If you were a hard worker, you know, you could get the basics. So that's what it was like then. And I think there's this fallacy that we all fall into, and I fall into too, is thinking that's the way the world's going to be, always and always and always. But we can see right now, it's not like that. It's almost flipping over in every aspect. But that's not what this video is about. My video is, okay, so when this is done, and this is, I know this has happened to me before when I've talked about this, is that people will say, well, you're so fortunate and your dad had property, but he lived in a rural area. His property from where he was born is in a very rural area. And to tell you the truth, between my brother and I, by the time the house sells, which again, this is the thing, it's been about 4 years and we're just getting to the point of putting it for sale. And it's because of the workload both legally, when I finally got to the point where I could get to the house and see what it was. You had your normal living stuff, but my parents were very active. They did a lot of playing music in churches, and so they had lots of instruments. My brother wanted those, so they were willed to him, and that's fine. He lives far away. He lives way far. He actually lives in another country. I'll just say that. And so his ability to actually help me physically with a lot of things just wasn't there. He only gets home once a year, and that's quite a trip now as he's older too. But I was able to get some of my own kids who were younger to come down and to go to the house, Dad's house. Mom is in a home, by the way. She has dementia. She has dementia at the point that if you, like, even the day that it happened, when Dad had his stroke and went in the hospital, she just literally snapped. I mean, you could, within a week, she wouldn't know what key went to what door. She didn't know anything. And in fact, when we got to the house, they both had lived there and managed on their own for quite a while. And as I said, we couldn't get down because of COVID. Even the whole region was locked down for a while. I had health issues, which I didn't mention before, which these aren't chronological, but they're within that 4-year period. I spent almost an entire year out because of health issues. And I'll be honest with you, I had a non-cancerous prostate surgery that I had to wait 5 months in a catheter to have the surgery because there was so many people waiting, and people with cancer come first. And don't get me wrong, the health service was beautiful, wonderful. The people in it were beautiful, wonderful. But at the same time, now this was after Dad died, at the same time I had complained of digestive issues for years and years and years. And it turned out that I had, when I described my situation to the surgeon, he said, and they looked at even all the ultrasounds they took, even good quality ones. I had been in the hospital at least 3 times overnight for pain. They couldn't see that it was gallbladder related until the actual moment they did the surgery. So there it was. I had what's known as a necrotic, or a dead gallbladder. So that was it was life-threatening. I ended up having to stay in the hospital 5 days as opposed to coming out in 24 hours because they had a sac to make sure that the bile didn't get blood in it. In other words, that I was healing up okay. So that's been about over a year now, I guess. Well, I don't know. But anyways, the whole thing, it all happened at once. I had the prostate issue, and then I had to have surgery. I had to travel to another area to get the surgery done. And by the time spring hit of the next year, I was finally able to start doing things normally again, and now things are okay. At least they're okay. But the times I've gone to the Department of Transportation before that to try to get some of Dad's vehicles sorted out, they were just, don't get me wrong, we're not talking about vehicles worth a lot of money, almost a Tesla, but I don't know if that would be a good example nowadays. But yeah, we're talking like one vehicle was 12 years old at the time that I inherited. And yeah, sure, it's something. I used that vehicle to clean out his house, to travel down there. But yeah, there was instruments, there was your everyday living things. Dad kept things from his parents that came from that other land I was telling you about where he grew up. Old furniture, dishes, plates, crystal, you know what everybody collects. Even a huge model of a sailboat that someone in our family built many, many years ago, a schooner actually. So it's actually a historical thing, like something to be handed down. I still have that. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it because it's like at least 30 inches long. the hull of it. So what you're looking at is a situation where all this stuff was there, and it was normal living stuff in the house, plus furniture, plus going through every toothpick and thumbtack in every drawer, and plus with mom having dementia. For example, that one vehicle that I said was 12 years old at the time, we needed to get the registration form for that, and we found it in a grocery shopping bag packed full of Christmas greeting cards from Mouth and Foot artists, and they shipped them out. Mom would donate to those places, and that's what we were faced with. And things that Dad kept, tons of things, just stuff, whether it was a toaster or anything that didn't work, he had it. So finally, after a while, we arranged it such that we were able to pile things out in the yard that we thought weren't worth anything. And we found someone through Facebook that lived in the area that was willing to come, and we paid them. Actually, I was power of attorney, so I used what Mom had in her account to have this person, and there's still stuff to haul away. Like we're talking, like I still got a 45-gallon drum of oils and stuff that Dad had down there. I've got to get that removed from the property. I've also, Dad had a backhoe from 1958, 57, so you're looking at over 2 tons. It had a backhoe on it. It was, wow, I got a little chickadee here visiting me. I hope you can see it. I don't know if you can see him or not. But yeah. Hi there, chickadee. Can you see him? Anyways, he's right there. Now you can hear him anyway. Chickadee-dee-dee, they say. Yeah, so finally, eventually, it took almost close to 3 years to get rid of the backhoe, because it was a family friend that's from down in his home that finally was able to come. And he was ready to come meet me, but I was having health issues, and just one thing after another. So the point of this is what I'm going to say. And Dad also had a couple older buildings that were just packed. I mean, he would try to fix bicycles. His basement was packed. There was motorcycles down there that didn't work, that sort of belonged to my brother. I tried to get them re-registered. No papers found on them. That took forever. So we finally just got rid of them as junk. They didn't work anyway, but somebody was interested in coming and hauling them away for parts. And it's just one thing like that after another. And my dad was 87. And this is the point. And my wife and I are taking really good notes from this, personal life lessons. It's not wrong, in my opinion, I don't know what you guys think, but it's not wrong to have stuff. But I think as you get up to a certain age and you know that life's been good to you, and you know that, let's put it this way, you're probably going to die like everybody else on the planet, and it's time to get serious about this stuff, and it's time to throw out what you're not using, sell what you don't want, give away stuff that you think's important, keep the things that are really important to you, have them well organized so that if you, hopefully, your kids outlive you and they have to deal with all this, you don't leave them such a mess. Yeah, there was a shed that I had opened, and it was just bicycle parts, snow blowers, and these are things that don't work. Okay, this is stuff he had strewn around the yard. Tires. Down over the hill, he had tires. There was there's still a pile of stuff there. Motorcycle chainsaw parts that were no longer any good. Microwave parts where he would take the copper out of these things and keep the copper. And they pile. And the odd thing is, the depot was only 5 minutes away from where he lived. But instead, I'm not talking that he doesn't have acres and acres of land, but enough to have a house on it. And he just piled this stuff, threw it down over the bank. There's one embankment full of just basically, I think it's mostly rubber. And I'm just not going to get to that. I mean, it's just too, the grass and the ground and everything and the trees have grown up through it. So half of it. And you just can't conceive of it. And when I would send my brother pictures, like you see the pictures on the surface, but what you're looking at are layers. It's just like someone an archaeologist going down through layers, because you might say, oh, we'll just throw that layer out. So when you get that layer out, you see there's another layer of stuff underneath that layer. Old ropes, fiberglass, tools with broken handles. It went on and on and on. And like I said, you have to go, why don't you just hire somebody to come in and get it? And I'll tell you why you don't hire somebody. In my situation, why I couldn't just hire someone. Part of it was the location. Part of it was the fact that they had things that were important, like I said, with things that weren't important. So I really felt that I had to go through it to determine what was important or not. So I think the whole takeaway from this, and there's no point in, I suppose, going on much longer about it, but I'd like to hear your guys' story. My wife was just basically almost the opposite. Her parents did live in a house, and when her father passed away, and then her mother actually passed away first, they had everything done. They had their funeral arrangements prepaid for. They had everything was done. So you could take time to grieve. And to be honest with you, as good as my father was, and as good as we had so many good memories together, I used to be his right-hand man. I helped him build the house. 50% of the house was me. And after school, like even when I got out of school, I would go out and spend days out there putting up gyprock and just everything. We built the house from the only thing we didn't do was we poured the footing, but we didn't do the basement walls. We just set up the frame for that and had somebody come in and pour that. But every single thing else, we even cut the wood off his property. That was, I said, was a 5-hour round trip. And this is when I was really young, or not really young, but I was like 18, 19. And then we hauled that to a friend's place who milled the lumber, and we would Dad had a half-ton truck, and we would load it with the lumber that was cut there and haul it all the way back, and we built the house that way. So even the house is 85% our own, the lumber that we cut. So yeah, it was quite a thing, but Dad just didn't look after it, and he left everything pile up, and you know, things that are heavy too, not just light things, but he had crates of, you know, I had to get my son to help me with this stuff. It was just too heavy. He had crates of just pipes, you know, steel elbows and just pieces of iron and pipes, and then he had buckets full of brass and copper, and yeah, you can get some money from that, but still you're dealing with all these things, and it takes, in our case, it's taken and is taken because of all the events that happened, the climate, the pandemic, when it was at its peak, all these occurred during that time. Could they have seen that happen? No, because they lived most of their life in a time when things like that just didn't happen. Yeah, sure, people got cancer, people had heart attacks, but you never had these worldwide events. So I'm not upset about that. But what I'm upset about, and what's taking me a long time, it gives me mixed emotions. So if you have kids, you just remember that when they start going through all your stuff that you're leaving them, and if it's going to take them years to go through it, it's going to have a bitter sweetness or something that's going to leave you conflicted. Because until you can bury that stuff, you really can't move on and grieve. Because there'd be times I'd just be simply angry with my father, angry for leaving things to go to such a mess. And you know, to this day, I still love him, and like I said, I have fond memories of everything we did, from fishing and everything. You know, when I was younger, we went camping, and he had fun. He gave us great Christmases, and Mom and Dad did. But this is really tainting the memories. And I hope in time, and like I said, this property and stuff, it's not like, woohoo, oh yeah, it's a lot of money. No, it's not. Even by the time we get through all the legal stuff and pay everything, it wouldn't buy me a brand new car. But what's the more important thing is the amount of work and the pain, I think maybe you could call it that he's caused on me personally by leaving such things. You know, he was very quick in his mind. He could have did these things, but no, he just wanted to work on his motors. There was encyclopedias there in the basement that had full of mold, and instead of throwing them out, they were there. They had white mold on them. Yeah, I could go on and on and on. The stove, he had a stove in the basement. The pipe that connected the insulated pipe that went up through the house, he could burn wood, but that the small stove pipe that went up was so rotten that when I took it, I could put a screwdriver right through it. It was so rotten. It's a wonder he wasn't like gassing himself in the basement or something. But man, oh man. Anyway, if you're watching this and if you're still here and you had any comments, leave them below. Have you gone through something similar? Do you see the importance of getting rid of your stuff and cleaning it, and at least organizing it, at least having it organized and not all mixed together? It's going to help your kids. If you have kids, you don't want to leave them this kind of a mess. Anyways, that's it. No use to belabor this. Yeah, I might be able to add a few photos in here, and you can have a little look at some of the things that we're facing. And remember, when you see them, you're only seeing the surface. Once you start peeling away those bike parts and down to the rope and the fiberglass and the tools and the water pumps and the, geez, yeah, I will tell you, I said a few words that he wouldn't be happy with, and the stuff that happened. Anyway, we will see you in the next one, guys. Have a good one. Take her easy.